Welcome to Serial, the series where crime and cooking collide. Today we're going to be making homemade pizza, and we're also going to be talking about William Bonin, the Freeway killer. William Bonin was born in 1947 in Connecticut. He was the middle child of 3 boys. His father was an alcoholic and often abused the boys both physically and sexually. He was a very abusive upbringing. The kids were always dirty, they were always hungry, and they were always ill-clothed, so they didn't have a lot of clothing, definitely not for the weather. So the neighbors often would invite the boys in and give them clothes and give them food and try to take care of them. Now, at the age of 6, William Bonin's parents decided to send him and his brothers to live with their maternal grandfather. Now, the problem with this is the maternal grandfather was already a convicted pedophile for abusing his own daughter, William's mother. So that is where the sexual abuse started to begin, was by his own grandfather. Then, in order to remove the boys from that abusive situation, the parents decided to put them in an orphanage. So at the orphanage, the abuse continued. The boys were already desensitized to this at age 6, which is disgusting. And they were often abused by a priest that would come and visit the orphanage. And around the age of 8, William Bonin was being sexually abused by an older boy at the orphanage. Now, around the age of 10, he was sent to a youth detention center because he was caught stealing license plates. Now, the family in a little bit is going to end up moving to California, and that's where you will see a rise in everything that is going to make William Bonin a serial killer. But while he is in the detention center, his abuse continues by older boys. He often engages in it consensually now at this point, even at 10 years of age. So in 1961, William Bonin is about 13, 14 years old, and that's when his family loses their house in Connecticut and then moves to California. We're going to stop right there because we need to get our pizza crust started. So we are making a fathead pizza crust. So if you're unfamiliar with what a fathead pizza crust is, it is a low-carb pizza crust. So we are going to start off with 2.5 cups of mozzarella, and we are going to melt this in the microwave on 30-second increments until it is nice and melted and smooth. Usually takes, in our microwave, takes about a minute and a half. So let's get that in there, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about William Bonin. Okay, well, that's going a little bit. Okay, so out in California, he does manage to graduate high school in 1965. Now, in 1965, his mom already knows that there is something odd with William's sexuality, and she believes that he is a homosexual. So she goes and sets him up with a woman. He ends up getting engaged to this woman shortly after he graduates from high school, and then he ends up joining the military. Now, in the military, he's going to end up being I forget what this is called. It is a door gunner for a helicopter. Let's stir our cheese. And we'll put it back in for another 30 seconds. So while he's in the military in Vietnam, because he's now stationed in Vietnam, he is this airman. He hangs out of a helicopter and shoots at the enemy below. He is actually going to receive a good conduct medal for saving a fellow airman. One of the other gunners in the helicopter is actually shot and injured, and William pulls him back in before he falls out of the helicopter. So he receives a medal for that. Now, even though he's received some medals, for good conduct and everything in the military, it'll actually come out later on that at least twice he raped 2 fellow soldiers at gunpoint while he is in Vietnam. So after he serves 3 years in Vietnam with the Air Force, he then comes back home to California. He gets married, Now, he gets married to his fiance, but she is definitely starting to grow a little worrisome in their relationship. She's a little scared of some things that William has told her about sex and just his fantasies and weirdness. So she gets really weirded out, and she decides to divorce him. So she does divorce him. Okay, we're gonna put this in for another 30. All right, not long after he leaves the military, he's back, he's married, he's divorced. He then is arrested for assaulting 5 teenage boys. He sexually assaults them and then lets them go. Well, they basically go to the cops and they arrest William Bonin. Okay, he doesn't end up going to prison. They find out that he is I can't remember the terminology, but basically mentally disturbed sexually. So they sentence him to 5 years in a psychiatric hospital. While he's in the psychiatric hospital, he basically learns how to manipulate everybody. So he learns how to manipulate to get out of the state hospital that he's in. So now we're pretty melted here, okay? We're going to mix in 2 ounces of cream cheese. Okay, mix that in there. And we're also gonna mix in 1 egg. I just wanna get the cream cheese in a little bit to cool down that cheese mixture some, or else I'm gonna have scrambled eggs. So, okay, got our 1 egg here. Anyway, he's released from the state hospital after 5 years. Well, that was a double yolker. Gotta love farm fresh eggs. And in September of 1975, so he's already abused 5 boys. And in 1975, September, he meets David McVicker. Now it's the last day of summer for David, and he actually hitchhiked to a nearby town because he does not live like where his friends live. So he lives about a half an hour away. I believe he lives in Huntington Beach, but he hitchhiked to where his friends were. Now, I guess hitchhiking was really normal in the 70s. Now you would never do that because there's lots of crime shows that tell you not to. But anyway, it was if you wanted to get from point A to point B and you didn't have a car and you didn't have a license, I guess hitchhiking was the way to go. So he hitchhikes from Huntington Beach to a nearby town. Now he's hitchhiking on his way back home, and he is picked up by William Bonin. Okay, things started to get really uncomfortable for David McVicker because Bonin started asking him questions like, are you a homosexual? Would you like to do some gay acts? Things like that. So David McVicker tries to get out of the vehicle. And when he tries to get out of the vehicle, William Bonin puts a gun to his head. So he's not going anywhere. So he's back in there. He's 14 years old. He's just a young boy. And he's driven to a vacant lot where William Bonin sexually assaults him and binds him, and then uses his own t-shirt and a tire iron to strangle the boy. Before the boy loses consciousness, William Bonin decides to stop. And he then drives David McVicker home. Now, David McVicker is not stupid. He tells Bonin he lives a couple blocks away. So he has Bonin drop him off a couple blocks from his house. Okay, let's talk about that in a second. Okay, so we have our egg, our cream cheese, and our mozzarella right here. Now, in this bowl, I have 1 cup of almond flour. I have a ½ teaspoon of baking powder. I have some Italian blend seasoning, and I have some roasted garlic in here. We're not adding any salt to this. So we're going to mix this in. I usually try to do it about half and half, but for the sake of telling you guys the story, I'm gonna dump it all in at once. Okay, so David McVicker tells him to drop him off a couple blocks from his house. He doesn't want William Bonin to know where he lives, right? So he starts cutting across yards and he starts, you know, walking in and out of houses, just trying to lose William Bonin. So he finally gets to his own house. He thinks he's lost Bonin, and then all of a sudden he hears a honk on a car, and it's William Bonin. And he's like, well, I'll be seeing you again soon. Well, this freaked David Vickers out even more. So he goes in, tells his mom exactly what happened. They file police reports, the whole 9 yards. They don't hear anything for months. Then one day, William Bonin is in class, and the police come in and they want to talk to him. They want to question him. So he goes with the police, and they have a lineup set up. Before the guys even stop on the lineup, he already picks Bonin out. He's like, that's him. That's the guy that did this to me. So he's 28. William Bonin's about 28 at this time. Okay. So he's found guilty, and he's sentenced to 15 years. But for some reason, they let him out after just 3 years. Okay. Finish mixing this. This is where we're at with our dough. Okay. So they let him out on parole after about 3 years. He's now 31. He's a truck driver. Now this dough is going to be really sticky, you guys. So he's 31. He's got a job as a truck driver. He has his own apartment. Okay. But it's about a year later, and he's arrested again for assaulting another teenage boy. Like, go figure, right? But, and then of course they get him for violating his parole because he, you know, broke the law again. But there's some sort of paperwork error, some crazy paperwork error, and he is set free. He's set free instead of going back to prison. Okay, so now at a friend's party after he gets out of prison, he meets a 21-year-old by the name of Vernon Butts. Now, Vernon Butts is a mutual friend of the neighbor whose party he's at, and he's going to become the first of 4 of William Bonin's accomplices, okay? Now, I'm going to be using this cast iron Lodge pizza pan for making this crust, okay? So, he meets Vernon, and somehow he talks Vernon into, oh no, I'm all sticky. Talks Vernon into starting to commit some crimes, okay? It's not long after that Gregory Miley will become the second of Bonin's accomplices. Now, Gregory Miley is 18 years old. Also met him at this neighbor's house, this neighbor's apartment. And he would either take Vernon Butts or Gregory Miley with him cruising. That was the word he used, cruising, for victims. They would then find teenage boys either as male prostitutes or hitchhiking, and they would lure them or force them into their Econoline van. They would then drive them to vacant lots, and they would then sexually assault them, torture, and kill them. A lot of times it was strangling, but there are some other ways that they had killed people. They forced one victim to drink hydrochloric acid. They also used ice picks in shoving them in the ears and other facial orifices to kill their victims. And then one of their victims actually died of shock. So this is our pizza crust at the moment. Let me wash my hands and we'll get right back to it. So after they would assault these young boys and they would torture and kill them, They would often dump their bodies on the side of freeways, in vacant lots on the side of freeways. So like a vacant grocery store or a vacant parking lot. At one time, they put the victim right outside a rear delivery door of a business. So they kind of have their own little MO going right now, and he's got the 2 accomplices that will go with him, either Vernon Butts or Gregory Miley at this point. Okay. Bonin had outfitted this Econoline van, so he removed the inside door handles so nobody could escape. He also had different bindings, such as rope. He had handcuffs. He had a lot of tools he would use, his torture tools, and then everything was there. It was a mobile kill, just a mobile crime scene, basically. In March of 1980, a 3rd accomplice joins Bonin in his crimes, and his name is William Ray Pugh. And that's going to be very important. William Ray Pugh is only 17 years old, and he'll come into the story a little bit later on. But for our pizzas, it's on 400 degrees. We're gonna cook that crust for about 12 to 15 minutes, depending on how done you like it. Now, we made one earlier today, and I cooked it for 15 minutes because I like my pizza crust very done. At this point, you can do whatever you want with this pizza crust, but we're gonna top ours with pizza sauce. We're gonna top it with some Italian sausage, some pepperoni, some chopped up red onion, and some chopped up different peppers, different sweet peppers. Anyway, I will tell you, if you're gonna use raw Italian sausage, make them itty bitty tiny little crumbles. That way you don't have to cook it ahead of time. It'll just cook in the oven. Okay. So his 3rd accomplice, Pugh, now joins him. Around the middle of May of 1980, Vernon Butts has just had enough of this. He doesn't want to do it anymore, okay? He's just, Bonin is trying to get him to go out and search for these victims, and Vernon Butts is like, yeah, no thanks. Like, I've had enough of your disturbing ways. So so Bonin has to find another one, a 4th accomplice. So he finds James Monroe. Now, James Monroe is 18 years old. Oh, wait, I totally said that wrong. New accomplice and 18-year-old James Monroe. Yep, I totally did that right. Okay, so James Monroe is not going to be with William Bonin for long. So we're talking middle of May 1980. Vernon Butts doesn't want to be involved anymore. And then comes James Monroe. Okay. Now, James Monroe can't get in too much trouble, right? Okay. So, because the last known victim is coming up here pretty quick, which is awesome. Okay, so the last known victim is killed in June of 1980. And then things start to get a little haywire. Okay. Sorry, I'm opening up my pizza sauce. So, Pugh gets arrested. Now, Pugh is just new. He's very new to William Bonin's craziness, right? Like, he only just came on board with the crazy in the middle of May when Vernon Butts leaves. So, the beginning of June is when Pugh gets arrested. Now, he's going to get arrested for stealing a car, okay? Has nothing to do with anything William Bonin is up to. He gets arrested for stealing a car because, just might as well break a lot of different laws at the same time, I guess. So, he gets arrested. He tells his counselor, you know what? The guy you're looking for with the freeway killer, his MO sounds a lot like my friend, William Bonin. Well, the counselor tells the cops, and the cops start looking into William Bonin's past, and they see that, he's done a stint in a state hospital for assault on 5 boys. He's done another prison stint for the assault on David McVickers. Like, he assaults another boy and gets arrested. Like, he's been arrested like 3 times for this crap. So he goes, they start watching him. They start doing surveillance on him. And they're following him around. They watch him unsuccessfully. This is like, I'm trying to think of what date this is. This is definitely in June of, yes, it's June 11th actually. So he is, June 11th, 1980. He is driving around Hollywood by himself, Bonin is, in his Econoline van. And he has tried unsuccessfully to abduct or give rides to or whatever, 4 young men. Okay. And the cops are following him. So, on the 5th try, he gets one to go with him. So the cops follow him all around Hollywood. Okay, we have our sausage on there. We're gonna add some diced peppers. The cops are following him. Finally, he pulls off into a vacant parking lot. Okay. Cops park a couple blocks away. They sneak up onto the van and they hear screaming. Okay. So they bust open the van. They save the current victim in what would have been their death because they all die. He learned his lesson. After the first 5, he's not going to leave them open or alive anymore. That's when he started killing. So they get the victim out. They arrest Bonin. They search his van. They search his house. They find all sorts of evidence. They find all the tools that he had, the restraints he had, all of that in the van. They find blood in the van and other bodily fluids from his victims. They find a scrapbook where he's keeping track of all the murders, every press, anything that was ever in the newspaper. Check this real quick. Oops, looks good. And they find all of that, okay? But he denies involvement. It's like, it wasn't me. It was my accomplices. I'm just an innocent bystander. I had nothing to do with it. But they caught him in the act of assaulting the victim that they had saved, you know? But he just, and he's got a record. Like, they already know. I can't get my onions open. They don't want to be on my pizza. Those peppers sure opened easy. Okay. So, they don't believe him. They don't believe him at all. So, he denies. They ultimately charge him with 21 murders. Now, some of those murders he's going to be charged, you know, in city locales. Some he's going to be charged in Orange County. So it just depended on where the victim's body was found. So he's charged in 2 different places. Okay. And he gets charged with a ton of other crimes that have to do with the murders and the assaults that he did on everybody. So on January 6th, 1982, Bonin is found guilty of 10 murders. And he was given the death penalty for those first 10 murders, okay? Then, on August 2nd, 1983, he's found guilty of an additional 4 more murders. So he is found guilty of 14 murders. Now, that's 14 guilties. But they think he could be, like, responsible for up to 44 murders. Because he definitely talked about a lot of stuff while he was in prison. And tried to, some he said he did, some he said he didn't. He tried to put all the blame on his accomplices anyway, but they said he could be guilty of up to 44 murders. Let me put that right there on my plan. Anyway. So he's sentenced again. The first time he's sentenced for the 10 murders, and he's given the death penalty, okay? Then in August 2nd, 1983, he's found guilty. This is our pizza going in the oven, y'all. He's found guilty of 4 more murders in Orange County, and he's sentenced to death again. So he's received 2 life sentences, or 2 death sentences. 2 death sentences. On January 11th, 1981, Vernon Butts commits suicide in his cell. So he does not get, I got something on me. He does not get tried for the murders and the assaults that he was involved in. Okay. Monroe is given 15 to life for 1 count of murder. Now, Miley receives 25 to life for 1 murder. In February of 1982, he receives that sentence. And then he receives another 25 to life for another murder victim shortly thereafter. Now, Miley will die in prison, and he'll die in prison in 2016, 2 days after he is assaulted by another inmate. Okay. Now, Pugh receives only, now he's the one that kind of got the ball rolling. He was only really involved in the operation for about a month before, 2 weeks to a month before he got arrested for stealing that car. And he definitely was the one that narked them all off right away. So he actually only receives 6 years, and he gets that for voluntary manslaughter. Now, he only serves 4 of those years, and he was released from prison in 1985. To my knowledge, he's still alive. Bonin spends 14 years on death row in California. Now, there's some weird things that are going on in California at this point in time. Number one, they have decided to do away with the gas chamber. They feel that the gas chamber is inhumane. It brings a lot of Hollywood talent, Hollywood stars, along with politicians, and just the who's who of the United States in the late 80s, early 90s, and mid 90s. It brings them all out of the woodwork to fight against the gas chamber. So, the gas chamber is ruled inhumane in the state of California. So, William Bonin becomes the first person in the state of California to die by lethal injection because they have just done away with the gas chamber. So, he's the first one. So that's his only significance in this whole story. Okay. Now, for his final meal, he asked for 2 large pizzas. He asked for 18 cans of Coke, and he asked for 3 pints of ice cream. He also asked to share this meal with 5 people. Among those 5 people were not only his lawyer, but a biographer and a chaplain. And that is why we made pizza, and we talked about William Bonin, the Freeway killer. Let's see if our pizza's ready. Not yet, not yet. Our crust is done. We'll pull that one out. We will top this now for whatever my husband and son went on theirs, because I made mine first. But it's getting there. It only has to be in there until my sausage and cheese is cooked and melted. But thank you, and join us again for Cereal.